Hello, in this tutorial I'm going to walk you through how do you set up a project from scratch on Geodesign Hub. For the sake of this video, I'm going to use a project specification template that I have developed. You obviously don't have to use it, but we have found this to be useful in my experience. For any project, you need a study area. A study area is a piece of geography that you can set or preset, let's say, before you start doing the project. Once you have a study area finalized, the first thing you have to do is to build a list of systems or evaluation models that you want to be included as a part of your study. We recommend up to 10 of these systems, and these systems can be things like critical areas, surface water, groundwater, agriculture, tourism, low density residential, high density residential, so on and so forth. So you have to come up with 10 of these systems beforehand, again, before you even start any of the study on the tool. Once you have the 10 systems identified, you have to start defining the criteria for assessment for each of these systems. Firstly, you need a description of the system, a brief description, and then the idea for criteria is because you have to create 2, 3, or 5 color maps like the one that you're seeing on my screen for evaluations. Here, the maps work like a traffic lights, where red instructs the user to stop any changes or don't go there, and green tells them that this area is ripe for change. Now, these maps that you're seeing need a legend, and that's what you're seeing over here in lines 9 through 16, where a 5-color legend has been developed based on existing data sets. And you can use, obviously, GIS and other technologies to build these maps. But what we're doing here is for each of the 10 systems, building a legend for the evaluation maps. This assumes that you have the data and the GIS capability as well, but sometimes you don't have that. And in those cases, the evaluation maps can be sketched by hand on the tool directly without the use of any GIS. So now you can see here the 5-level legend for each of these systems and how you start building these maps. The next thing is the impact model. What it tells you is how each of the system impacts the other. So on the tool, we use a 5-color scheme, with 2 being the most positive and -2 being the most negative. So you have critical areas impacting surface water as +2, groundwater as +2. So basically, it means that any change in a critical area would impact positively the surface or the groundwater. In the same way, if you put a shopping mall in a critical area, the surface water and groundwater would be impacted. Therefore, you have the -2s there. In this way, you build a matrix of how one system impacts the other. Geodesign Hub is totally dynamic, where one system interacts interactively and is connected to each of the other systems. So this kind of setup is necessary beforehand. The next step, after you have identified the 10 systems and how they interact with each other, is to specify how evaluation or a change in one system impacts the evaluation of another system. So in the case of surface water, what we're specifying here is how changes on the surface water system impacts the evaluations in red, yellow, and green of the other system. So you can see a positive change in surface water makes the critical areas groundwater better, but has a negative impact on high density residential, commerce, and so on. In this way, you build a matrix for each of the 10 systems. You can do all of this directly in the tool, but it is recommended that you use a spreadsheet like this so that you can change and have a discussion beforehand. Finally, the other thing that you have to specify is a cost model. There is a very, very simple cost model associated with the tool. You can use your sophisticated financial models by linking it externally, but for the purposes of this demo, we're going to use the simple cost model. Basically, what it is a per acre cost for each of the systems, and this can be used through basically research or an educated guess or from experience or things like that, but you're able to specify how much it costs per acre. Finally, here is a list of the project participants. We recommend up to 30 people collaborative design a plan for a study. As you can see, there is an affiliation, there is an email which is hidden, an area of interest or expertise, and then the system team that they're assigned to. So every participant is a part of two teams. One is the system team, where he builds recommendations for the systems that you've identified, and then he changes his affiliation and becomes part of a change team where he is designing for a particular client, such as the developers, environmentalists, and so on and so forth. So we use this spreadsheet to specify who is in what system team and what change team. And that's really what it is from a setup point of view. Now that you have your spreadsheet set up, the next thing to do is to start a project on the site. For that, you click on this plus icon, enter your invitation code, and then hit the create project. The first thing that you see in a create a project screen is a map with an address bar in it. So let's say I'm going to create a project for London. So I'm going to zoom out and set the bounds of my study area, as you can see here. And let's say we're going to do the entire London metropolitan area. I'm going to give it a title and a description. And that's it. And usually the project comes with one system setup, but you can have others, but in this case we won't. We hit create project, wait for a little bit, and then you should see a new project created and added to your profile message. And then I go back to my profile and you can see the London Geodesign project here. I'm going to hit launch and you can see my administration screen. Since I created the project, I am the administrator for it. The first thing that you see is the project area tab, where you can actually set and unset or change the bounds of your study area. It is recommended that you finalize this and not change it once it is finalized. The next step here is this 10 systems. As you can see, the project comes with one system that is inbuilt, and I'm going to start adding the 10 that we have. So the first one is critical areas. So I'm going to go to settings and then hit rename because we have one already, and I'm going to name it. Given the short space that we have for requirements, we use abbreviations quite a bit. So I'm going to hit rename, and then now this is my critical area requirement. The next one is surface water and groundwater. In the same way, I'm going to do it. So it's an attractiveness, it's a vulnerability type requirement, it's a policy, and I'm going to say surface water. I'm going to name it blue. Every system, when it is added, the tool assigns it a color, but you can obviously change it. And it is recommended that once you have a system in place, you don't change the color. The next one is groundwater and agriculture. So I'm going to name it a groundwater. I'm going to add requirement, and then I'm going to give it dark blue. The next one is agriculture. It is a vulnerability type requirement, and it is porous. And I'm going to give it a green color, dark green. Then you have tourism, low density residential, and high density residential. So let's add them. Then you have commerce, industry, and utilities. And utilities are black. So these are my 10 systems that I have for my study. You can do a lot of things when you have the system set up. You can rename them, you can specify if constraints apply to these requirements or not. You can add a target. So for example, if you need 50 hectares of housing or 100 hectares of commerce, or things that you can specify a design target for, you can add so here. You can also change the type of requirement it is. Is it an attractiveness or a vulnerability type requirement? Is it something that needs to be preserved or conserved, or is it something that needs to be changed? And essentially you can change that. Again, all of these things can be changed, but the recommendation here is to not change it once the study has started. So this has to be done before. You can also specify what type of changes this requirement will have. Will it be small building, large building, things like that. And once you have them, you have the 10 systems in place. The next step now is to input the cross-system impact model that we have built already. For that, you go to the Requirements Impacts tab and then hit any of these requirements that we just added. So for example, surface water, and then specify how surface water impacts all the other systems. So in this case, we have critical areas as 1. So I'm going to specify 1 here. So a change in the surface water impacts positively by +1 to the critical areas. In the same way, utilities is -2 to critical areas. So if I go to utilities, and then I hit -2, -2, -2, -2, -2, and then I have to hit Save Details. So you can this way set up the impacts. The next thing to do is how change in one system impacts the evaluation of another system. And for that, you go to the Connections panel. Here you select the requirement that you want to specify it for. So in this case, surface water. And then you start to input these figures that you have built. So in this case, the critical areas is 2, 2, -1, 2, 2, 1, -1, and -2. So I hit 2, 2, 1, -1, and -2, and so on and so forth. Once you have set your connections for this system, you hit Set Connections, and then they will be saved. So like that, you start entering all of these 10 matrices in the tool. And this is the reason why it is better to create this in Excel beforehand, because it will be very confusing when you start using it on the tool directly. The next thing is the cost estimate model. So here you go to the TAC costs panel and start to specify each of these type of systems. What is the per acre cost, per hectare cost? And all you have to do is move the sliders like so, and those costs are then set. The next step here is change teams. As you can see here, the project participants have been assigned a certain amount of change teams. So in this case, it is developers, environmentalists, local people, government, old people, and young people. So I'm going to create a developer team. So I'm going to hit the Add Change Team button, and I'm going to name it Dev, and I'm going to create a change team. And here you can see I can rename, delete, and manage users. So currently there are no members in the team. You can add a regular user by clicking here, or a conductor to the team. Since we have 30 people that we want to invite to this project, what you can do is go to the Invite tab up here and click on it and use the invitation emails here to invite them. So I enter an email or a series of emails and then send an invitation message and then hit invite to project, or you can actually send this link directly to them so that they will join the project as a member. Once they have joined the project, they will see the project on their profile page, and also it will be available for you to use over here. You can also add administrators to this project. So if you want to have somebody else help you with the administration tasks, you can hit add an administrator and there select their username and add them as administrator. So this panel that you're seeing would be visible for them as well. You can change the title and the description of the project here. And finally, if you have external layer data, you can add them over here. So I'm going to add a design aid. So it could be a WMS or WFS, and I'm going to say it is a WMS layer. So I'm going to put my URL and my roads, and I'm going to hit add external layers. And as you can see that I've added a WMS layer as a design aid for this project. Add up to 5 external layers. as WMS or WFSs as well. The other thing about these systems is that you can actually do a couple of things. One is to link them dynamically. So if you have an external model running one of these systems, you can actually link that external model using here, again, using as post WMS or WFS. So if you have an ArcGIS server or map server or any of these other servers that you have a model for agriculture running, you can actually link the impacts or the evaluation maps to the tool. And geodesignssupport.com has a detailed articles on how you can do that. And that's really it. That's how you set up a project. So if I go to my design page now, you will see that I have all my 10 systems set up to the map which I started, and then it starts off as an empty grid where you can now have people coming in and starting to add diagrams and so on. And I would recommend listening to the second YouTube video in this channel to understand how to build a design and add and edit diagrams and so on and so forth. Thank you.